Hello again, this is SickleYield, and I'm going to show you how to rig a basic figure. So we're going to start with this terrible door and wall setup that I have here. Having only the most basic parts, please don't ever try to submit something that looks this bad to DAZ. This is just so that it has all the correct bits. This has a ceiling, a wall, a floor, and a door. And it has vertex groups set up for each of those. The hinges are on the door group because they need to move with the door. You can do the modeling program, including hexagon. And you need to have your material zone set up and your UV projection already done before export, all your material zones finalized. And then you export to a wavefront, to OBJ, at whatever scale you like. I operate on DAZ Studio's scale because Blender's scale presets are more or less broken in DAZ Studio, but that is up to you. You need a figure setup tab in DAZ Studio to start working with this. You can do that by right-clicking over on the side of 3D window to add pane tab and then figure setup. So once I have my figure setup tab, I will right-click on the left side where it says geometry list and click add geometry. Then I will navigate to my exported wavefront and click accept. Now when I expand that by double-clicking, I can see my different vertex groups that I assigned are here. That's why that's important. And then I will hold down left-click and drag that over to the hierarchy pane and onto the word geometry. Now, bones have been created for each of those things. I'm going to change the door to YZX because it's upright. I'm going to leave the floor, ceiling, and wall at XYZ. I'm going to actually change the wall to YZX as well because it's also upright. And I'm going to drag the door over the wall. And I'm also going to create a root bone by right-clicking on the word bones, clicking add child bone, and I'm going to call it room. And this will create a node that all of these will be grouped under, and then I'm going to drag each of these onto the room. So now the room is a parent of the floor, ceiling, and wall, and the wall is a parent of the door. And when that is finished, I'm going to click Apply Sub D down at the bottom here, and then click on the green Create button. Now it has regenerated my geometry there, and I'm going to click on this little bone with a pen across it to activate the Joint Editor tool, or Alt-Shift-J. Now you can see that it has created my bones. This one right here, that doesn't appear connected to anything, is my root node, around which everything will rotate. So I'm actually going to move that back to the wall. So that if things get rotated, they will rotate properly. And if you want to see the specific position of these origin points, you can go to the Tool Settings tab and see the X, Y, and Z positions of the center point, the end point, and you can also change the orientation of the bone using the orientation dials. So there we are. Now for the door, it has a bone that's more or less oriented up and down vertically, and if you go to the Parameters tab, you'll see that it already has bend, twist, and side-to-side dials. They don't do anything because we haven't assigned the groups yet, but that's very easy. To do that, I'm going to press Alt-Shift-W to go to weight map mode, and I'm going to right-click and choose Weight Editing, Weight Conversion, Convert Triax to General Weight. And then again, Weight Editing, Clear Weight, Clear Triax Weight. And now I will go with Weight Editing, Fill by Bone Selection Groups. Now, if you click on any bone here in the Scene tab, including the door there, and look at it in the Tool Settings, under the General Weights, it's all red because it's filled 100%. That's as much weighting as you really need to do with a rigid prop like this. But now, when I click on the door, it does bend, twist, etc., but it doesn't really rotate in the way that we wanted. It doesn't really have the orientation that we wanted, because the bone is centered on the middle of the door and not on the hinge side. And we want that centered on the hinge side, and we actually kind of want it to be pointed sideways like the others, not oriented up and down like the wall is. So I'm actually going to go to the Tool Settings tab and change the orientation to XYZ. And there we go. And then I can drag these object centers around, these little green and red widgets. And I'm going to drag it so that the origin widget, the green one here, is over on the hinge side, and the red one is more toward this other side of the door. Now, when I move the door, it should move more or less on its hinges there. I've placed the hinges poorly, as you can see, compared to the rest of the geometry, but at least it's opening and closing in roughly the way that we want it to. And if you want it to only open and close a certain amount, you can go to the parameters tab here where the dial that says side to side and click on the little gear, choose parameter settings, and set minimum to say 45 and maximum to 100. And where it says label, it says side to side, you can change that to open. And now the door opens but doesn't close quite that far. If you want it to not be able to over rotate there, you can set the parameter to 0, and now it just opens inward. Then right click in the parameters mode there and choose edit mode, and left click on bend, shift left click on twist, right click and hidden hide selected properties. Now the only property that users see for that door is that it opens, and you don't have to do anything else with those movements. And these other pieces have their own twist side to side, etc. And wherever the side origin is, wherever that green origin is, that's where it's going to rotate from. So if you want it to rotate from, for example, the center of the floor, you need to move the green point to the center of the floor. And now it bends more that way than previously. When you've finished fiddling with this to your satisfaction, when you've got everything rotating in the way that you want it to, right click and choose memorize figure rigging. And now this is memorized and it won't ruin your bones on reload. And now go to File, Save As, Support Asset, Figure Prop Assets. And choose a place to save it. I'm just going to call it Test. It automatically fills my vendor name because that's what's in my DAS settings. Under product name, I'm going to call it Terrible Door, and item name Test. This is where your vendor name, your product name, and the name of the item should go. You could call this room piece if there are other pieces that aren't the room, or like that. And then you click accept, and it will save it to the library. That's all there is to it. It's actually pretty simple when you're making a more basic item like this. So I hope that that's helpful to you, and happy rendering!